Somewhere in almost every program we write, there are going to be a bunch of tests. The tests help a program figure out which way to go, and they help us figure out what's happening. For example, suppose that we have a little game like this. The idea is we're going to shoot the orange ball onto one of the two green rectangles at the right, like miniature golf. The trick, though, is that the yellow triangles are moving over time. So our goal is to shoot the little red ball at just the right moment so that when it stops, it lands in one of the green boxes. So in this little game, success is whether the red ball is in either the top or bottom green box. We can imagine a slightly different game where the green boxes themselves are also moving over time. And maybe extra points are given if the red ball lands in both boxes at the same time. In other words, it's in the upper box and it's in the lower box. In this video, I'll talk about ways of using tests to let us make these kinds of determinations. In the video on if statements, we saw a bunch of basic numerical tests, less than and less than or equal to compare a couple of numbers, and their counterparts greater than or equal to. There was also equality and inequality, remembering that equality is tested with two equal signs, not just one, because just one is assignment. In this video, we're going to expand our repertoire with three new tests. The first is the opposite of A, which we write with an exclamation point, and we pronounce this bang A or not A, and you hear both of them. Bang only applies to booleans, so A has to be a boolean variable. The value of bang A is whatever A isn't. And remember, A only has two choices. So if A is true, bang A is false. If A is false, bang A is true. This is just a really useful little building block, and we'll use it a couple of times in this video. The other new tests are and or. And we write them this way. And is written with two ampersands, one after the other, no space between them. Or is written with two vertical bars, one right after the other, no space between them. You might have to look around to find the vertical bar on your keyboard. It's probably on the right-hand side of your keyboard near the curly braces, and you probably have to hold down the Shift key to get it. If we write two ampersands together with no space, that means and. If we write two vertical bars together with no space, that means or. So we'll look at all three of these in this video. Let's start by looking at bang, or not, the thing that gives us the opposite of A. Suppose we're running our fruit stand and we want to know if we have enough kiwis on hand. So we compare a couple of numerical variables, stock and demand. If we have more kiwis in stock than there is demand for them, then we have enough kiwis, and this is true. If demand is larger than supply, then enough kiwis is false. How do we know when to order more kiwis? Well, we order more kiwis when we don't have enough. And to find that out, we use the bang. That's all there is to bang. Bang something, where something is a boolean, just says, if the thing is true, I give you back false. If the thing is false, I give you back true. That's all the bang does. Let's look at and or. We'll start with and. And is written between two booleans. So just like plus is written between two numbers and gives us back a new number, and is written between two booleans and it gives us back a new boolean. In this case, the result is true if both B1 and B2 are both true. Let me give you an example of that. Suppose I want to know if my dog is wet. One way my dog could be wet is if it's raining outside and my dog is outside. If these two things are both true, then my dog is wet. Now, of course, there are other ways for my dog to be wet, and we won't worry about that for now. Let's just assume the only way you can get a wet dog is if it's raining outside and the dog is outside in the rain. So the and construction lets us put these two things together to find out if the dog is wet. Let's take a look at this in action. So I'm going to make three columns, one each for the condition of the dog, wet dog, the result, our boolean, and the two booleans is raining and dog outside. And let's look at the combinations. Let's suppose it's a beautiful day outside. is raining is false. And I'll mark that with this red background. How about the dog? What's going on with him? Well, let's say he's inside. So dog outside is false. So I mark that with a red background. Now let's and them together. Remember, and says, I give you back true only if both of the arguments are true. Well, they're both false. So the result is, I do not have a wet dog. And that makes sense. If it's not raining outside and my dog is inside, then my dog is dry. Well, let's look at the other conditions. Suppose that it's not raining. So is raining is false. But my dog is outside. But that's not enough. It's not enough for him to be outside. He has to be outside when it's raining to get wet. So if I and these things together, the fact that one is true doesn't help us because the other one is false. The result is I still have a dry dog. Wet dog is false. Let's try another condition. Suppose it's raining outside. All right, it's pouring rain. Where's my dog? My dog is inside. So is raining is true, but dog outside is false. Are they both true? Well, that's what the and asks. And no, they're not both true. My dog is inside where it's dry, so my dog is still dry. Finally, the last possibility. It's raining outside. Is raining is true. My dog is outside. Dog outside is true. Are both of these things true? Yes, they are. I have a wet dog. This summarizes all the possibilities. And if we lose the pictures and just look at the colors or just the words true and false, if you look at the left-hand side, the column for wet dog, the only time my dog is wet, the only time wet dog is true is when both of the variables that we hand to the and constructor are both true. If they're both false or one of them is false, the result is false. So and says both of these things are true. Where would we use this? Well, it turns out all the time. But for example, in our early game where I said we get extra points if we're in both rectangles, well, this would be a perfect place for that. If I'm in rectangle 1 and I'm in rectangle 2, I get double points. That wraps up the and test. In part 2, we'll continue the discussion and look at the or